Thanks to the College Promise and especially the Careers Institute for giving us the opportunity to share some of the things that we have found in our work over the past couple of years. Interestingly, based on the title of Intentional Inclusion, Recruiting Underserved Adult Students, we did not intentionally go after the findings we're about to show you today. But in our work focused on adults and adults who are interested in getting more education, we have unintentionally come across both trends and we think very important information for any program, any college, any system that's looking to recruit what would be known as underserved adult students. The enrollment figures from the fall of 2021, which were essentially a continuation of the 2020 numbers, have been trickling out over the past 3 weeks. And from an educational perspective, they are disturbing. One of the things that we've noted in the midst of all of these headlines is the headline there in the middle, which is that first-time students had the steepest enrollment declines, and especially older students, or what you might call non-traditional students, and students of color. And it was looking at those numbers that brought into focus the research that we have done that lead to the work that we do with colleges and universities, to have I think a pretty distinct point of view on the issue of adult recruitment and adult opportunities when it comes to higher education. So the data says, according to the enrollment figures, that the enrollments are down. And yet there is strong demand among all adults for education. We have been conducting surveys for nearly 2 years now, and we have analyzed 75,000 completed surveys during that time. And in those surveys, we ask a very simple question. Do you intend to enroll in any education or training in the next 2 years? In 2020, so the surveys we conducted between January and December, 80% of adults actually said no to the question, which leads to the 20% you see on the screen that said yes. In 2021, that 20% became 24%. Now, from a statistical standpoint, you might say that's about the same. But when you take into consideration sample size of 75,000, our margin of error is very small. And we believe this is a statistically significant increase in demand. And when extended throughout the adult population of the United States, it means just this year alone, 9.2 million more adults have intent to get education in the next 2 years than they did last year. So if enrollments are down, but demand is up, what gives? And the answer lies in who says yes to that question. Do you intend to enroll in education or training in the next 2 years? And this is where our data, again, unintentionally, has put a new light on the issue of not just adults, but certainly adults of color at the collegiate level. 16% of whites said yes to the question, but 40% of Black African Americans said yes. 41% of Hispanic Latinx adults said yes, and 39% of Asians. So people of color are 2.5 times more likely to have intent to enroll in education or training in the next 2 years. Meanwhile, we see from 2 slides ago that these are the exact populations that took the hardest hit during the pandemic and in this year post-pandemic. it would be disingenuous for me to say data models don't work because we're in the data modeling business. But it depends upon which data the models are built and based. And up until now, predictive modeling in the higher education space has been based on previous applications and enrollments from 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Some colleges we've spoken to run models that go back as far as 10 years. And models that are built on past performance or past data will only lead colleges and universities to repeat that past. The models will show and reflect what happened then. And that's a problem, because we just showed you that looking forward, people of color have much higher intent on future behavior, not taking into consideration anything that happened in the past. The lookalike algorithms, whether that's done through social media platforms or done and created through enrollment figures and enrollment demographics, in the geo-targeting of hot zip codes where students have come from in the past, only reinforce longstanding advantages and disadvantages when it comes to the recruitment of adult students. In the institutionalization of underserved populations happens when colleges and universities have efficiency challenges in their outreach. And college marketers are forced to pursue what they tell us is considered the low-hanging fruit of those most likely to attend, which are based on models of who used to attend. In that decision-making, we say borders on intentional exclusion. Remember, the title of the talk is Intentional Inclusion. But by using models from the past, algorithms that take only into consideration past events, and marketing that focuses on those types of models for the low-hanging fruit, create intentional exclusion, or maybe, to be maybe more fair, unintentional exclusion, but it's exclusion nonetheless. And intentional inclusion is one of the reasons that CollegeAPP was created. We know systematically that adult learners are increasingly important to maintain enrollments. Lots has been made of the birth rate challenge that faces the higher education industry. They started going down in 2007. There was a chance that they were going to go up, but then the pandemic hit, and it appears as though this long, slow decline in birth rates in America is going to continue well, if you do the plus 18, well into the late 2030s, maybe even into the early 2040s. So there are fewer high school seniors. What we just talked about, underserved communities, based on previous data, previous enrollment modeling, personas of the types of people who used to show up to college, continue to underserve those communities, if you will. States are doubling down, at least in the way they are talking about the challenge of educating their adult workforce. Having an educated workforce is a competitive issue from state to state. It helps them attract industry. It helps increase their tax base. It has all kinds of downstream benefits to the community. But previous efforts aimed at, whether you think of them as stop-outs or comebackers, but potential adult learners have mostly failed. There's lots of reasons for that, and that's probably for another discussion. But one of the reasons I'm convinced, and we're convinced at CollegeAPP, is that the focus has primarily been on the supply side of education services, which you could argue is in pretty good shape. It's not perfect, but it's in pretty good shape as it relates to programs being offered, certificate availability, the creation of departments aimed at adult learners or degree completers, and aimed at available and future jobs in a community, in a region, in a state. But that much of that work has not been actually focused on the learners themselves. It's been focused on the infrastructure that will help those learners get education. But now it's time to turn our attention to the learners. Predictive models should actually predict future behavior, not try to predict what's going to happen next based on what's in the past, but based on the attitudes and thoughts of the adults in America. And the most important one, we think, is intent. Does someone actually intend to get more education or training in the next 2 years? That's the survey question that we showed you the results on earlier in this talk. Where would they get that education? Do they want to go to a community college, vocational technical school, public or private four-year institution? Do they want to take that education partially online, somewhat online, all online? And in a related future behavior prediction, do they intend to seek a new job? Because often for adults, additional education intersects with interest in having new, different, better employment. This form of predictive modeling is not new, but it happens to be new to higher education. The methodology that those surveys were based on that we showed earlier was actually created in the first decade of the century by presidential campaigns, which have historically led the way in creating new methodologies to create competitive advantages. After the 2012 campaign, many of those people distributed throughout the commercial world and began using person-level predictive modeling, predicting future behavior to the commercial world, whether it's consumer packaged goods, retail, automotive, telecommunications, the motion picture industry, have all adopted some level. In some cases, they've gone all in on predictive modeling as the centerpiece of their marketing efforts. 2 years ago, we brought those same techniques, advised by some of the same people who created the methodology in 2007 and 2008, and created CollegeAPP in the hopes of helping colleges more efficiently find those 20 to 24% of adults who have intent to get education in the next 2 years. We're not the only ones working in this space. And not surprisingly, College Promise has relationships with almost everybody on this slide because you are looking to help solve a problem. You're part of a community of organizations that are looking to help solve this problem of adult attainment, especially among traditionally underserved audiences. We're proud to work closely with the Strata Education Network and our friends at Inside Track on both kind of global reporting on the issue from a white paper standpoint, but also on the ground working with institutions. California Competes is a nonprofit think tank in California. I assume there are many of those throughout the country who have hardworking people spending their whole day trying to figure out the puzzle of adult education attainment. We work with the Campaign for Free College Tuition, kind of a cousin, if you will, to the College Promise group. Again, a group that spends all its time looking for ways and people to help push the policies of more accessible education, free education for Americans. And the Lumina Foundation, which has been a leader in this space for a number of years, supporting state and regional initiatives. So there's a lot of work and a lot of good people and a lot of good thinking that's going into this issue. But as we go forward, we think a focus on the demand side of the equation, the person side of the equation, is what will help bridge all the great work on the programmatic side to the actual individual enrolling in college. And let me give you an idea of how many that 24% represents. The map you see is a representation of the states in which we have done our surveys and asked those questions. Do you intend to get more education or training? Where would you get it? Do you want to do that all online? Do you intend to seek a new job? And as you can see, there are nearly 30 million. Those colors are households with people who live in those households. In the states that we've done our work, and that's up 37 at this point, there are nearly 30 million adults with predicted intent to pursue education or training based on those questions that they were asked. Of those, almost 23 million do not already have a college degree. 23 million who do not have a college degree, who intend to get more college, more education, more training in the next 2 years. And if you look to the right of the screen, you can see the ethnic representation inside those, both the 22 and the 30 million. 48% of those adults who intend to get more education are either Hispanic or African American. 48%. That is the group that has been traditionally missed by outreach efforts, by marketing, by any method of recruitment, because they haven't looked like the people who used to go to college, because they didn't go when they had the first shot. But now they're saying they want a second shot. And we need to be able to fuel colleges, universities, training centers, the ability to find those people who otherwise they won't find through their predictive models of enrollments or the lookalike audiences of previous enrollments. They won't show up, but they have a chance to find them using new methodologies and new techniques. As a snapshot, I used to live in Colorado, so I like to use Colorado as an example. There are a little bit more than 650,000 Coloradans just in the state of Colorado who have high predicted intent to pursue education or training. And 82% of them don't have a college degree. Those people will not look like the people who are currently being marketed to in the state of Colorado for higher education opportunities, certificate opportunities. And we need to bridge the gap between what's been done in the past to what should be done in the future to have states meet their enrollment or their education attainment goals, for colleges to meet their enrollment goals, and for these underserved populations to get the attention that they want and deserve from colleges and from education providers, so that they become intentionally included in marketing outreach, not missed and bypassed. So how do you use data to create an intentionally inclusive strategy? You start with future intent. You turn your back, if you will, on the data from 2012 and 13, because it will not help you identify this unmet demand for education, either in a community college district or a state or in the country. They do not look like the adults who made it to college in the years past. Another reason to do it is the unknown variable of COVID-19. It hangs over us, and it will for quite some time. And there's no way to know or even to quantify the household to household effect that the pandemic has had, because it is such a person level pandemic, right? Household to household has different reactions. We live in a world where person-level future intent is the new guide because it's now measured from now looking forward, not looking backwards. We need to remember that the people in our data and anyone's data who's looking at intent among adult populations, the people who want and need education the most aren't experienced at it. FAFSA as an acronym doesn't mean anything to them. So they need not only to feel as though they're welcome, they need to be made to feel as though college is okay for them. And we need to find new ways to find them, reach them, communicate with them, coach them, and guide them through the process so that this interest in getting more education and training, which benefits everybody, can be realized. And it's really important to note that even if you build it, we talked about the programs, we talked about all the efforts that's been made on the supply side, and even free college, that doesn't necessarily mean they will come. Undereducated adults who want more education need attention and a feeling that they belong at the institutions that are building these wonderful programs to get them the training they need to change their lives. So thank you for your time. We are thrilled to be able to share with you this new perspective on the adult students. And it's not about their problems, it's about their intent. And as an industry, we look forward to participating in maximizing the intent that exists among millions of American adults to get them the certificate, the degree, the class that they need to change their lives. My contact information is on the slide. I would love to follow up with anybody who has more specific questions about our methodology, about your state or your region, or other ways that you might be able to take advantage of our data, whether it's to make a case for a policy or whether it's to help the college in your community find and recruit adult students. Thank you for your time.